everybody, and welcome to our discussion this morning. A lot to talk about, as usual. It's been a busy week, but first, I want to just say Happy Pride Month again. And on Sunday, a week from Sunday, we'll be celebrating Pride in New York. We have a national committee meeting that weekend, and after the meeting on Sunday, we'll be participating in the Take Back Pride demonstration. I believe it starts downtown somewhere near City Hall. So anyway, if you're in New York and you're watching and you want to join us, I think it starts at 2 o'clock. You're welcome to join us. Um, we also want to say happy Juneteenth. Take place on the 19th. Everybody should know. I think this is the second anniversary of Juneteenth being a national holiday, maybe the third. Juneteenth celebrates the Emancipation Proclamation issued in Texas, I believe. That was the first place it was celebrated. Um, uh, Demonstrating the work and role of the slaves themselves in achieving their emancipation. W.B. Du Bois said a turning point in the Civil War was achieved when there was a general strike of the slaves. You know, they cast down their tools, refused to work, and that turned the tide of the war against the slavocracy. And after that, thank goodness Jefferson Davis's days were numbered. And the South, that version of the South anyway, will never rise again. Not if democracy and the working class, Black folk, Latino, Asians, women, young people, LGBTQ have anything to do about it. You know, sometimes people keep saying, Rosanna, what is this discrimination? We live in a post-racial society. There's no discrimination. Everybody's treated equally. I saw a article this morning that was published in the Columbia Journalism Review, and it spoke to the rampant discrimination against Black and Latino uh, editors, writers, journalists in the news media. You know, for example, Condé Nast, 49% of new hires in 2022 identified white, up from 45% in 2021. At Vice Media, new hires in the US were 54% white last year, up from 47%. At Hearst, new hires were 59% white. At the very liberal, good New York Times, that thankfully published the 1619 report, 44% of new hires were people of colors, down, and I'm quoting now, a whopping 10 percentage points compared to 2021.
That's why you have to
You
look
know,
deeper always. Always look deeper. You can't just take, somebody just because you don't experience it on the day to day like we did growing up or like I did growing up, where you walk into the store and somebody's following you simply because you're a person of color and they think that you're going to steal something, and you don't see it out so openly. That doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And looking deeper into it, you can really see that it really does exist.
it sure does. Anita, racism is systemic, institutionalized, you know, um, almost contained in the DNA of capitalism. I think you and I debated that concept a couple months ago. What do you think? I mean, isn't that? I mean, after everything, this is, and that's just one industry.
I guess I don't want to say DNA of capitalism because I don't want to say capitalism is a biological, natural thing. I think racism is baked into the structures of society, the laws that we have, like the laws that were made back in the early part of the 20th century to hammer out the rules of Social Security. It roped off whole groups of people like domestic workers and other groups that were mainly people of color. So that law, those regulations were racist. And I think you have structural racism and institutional racism now happening, and has a huge impact. But nowadays, overt personal racism is more and more tolerated. Just racial violence and just outright discrimination. White people can seem to be racist with complete impunity, and they can get a Fox TV show if they want. So I think we're suffering right now from both institutional racism, what's baked in from the past, and also, contemporary personal racism.
But Scott, wasn't it Karl Marx who in Capital said words to the effect that it was the rape of India and Latin America and the turning of Africa into a warren for the hunting and buying of slaves that served as the basis for the primitive accumulation of capital? And so going all the way back, we have something that's, I don't know, to me, it looks like when you make a cake, and you're putting the primitive, you're accumulating the ingredients in a dish to put into the oven, that is kind of part of the DNA. Am I
Yeah,
right or
well,
wrong?
I mean, I'm not gonna take sides on the, which metaphor baked in or in the DNA is more appropriate, but um, that process that, is sometimes called primitive accumulation. Another author, historian Sven Beckert, has called it um, war capitalism, which I think is a really accurate way of describing the brutality of that early um, pillage of resources and absolutely merciless um, disregard for enslavement of genocide of peoples and the way that and capitalism's dependence on racism extends beyond that as well. If we look at the moment in our country when the basis for our property laws was being argued and decided in front of the Supreme Court, it was um, the period when the Southeast had been opened by the genocide and displacement of Native people and the importation of enslaved Africans into that region to create what would become the plantation economy. And so the laws, the structures, the basic foundation of American capitalism was developed in slavery, and that continues to mark it both in its dependence on white supremacy, its um, embrace of racism, but also in terms of its brutality toward all working people. The level of exploitation and insecurity and domination that all workers face is also uh, um, a reflection of the brutality of that early system.
Racism is more than the ideas in a bigot's head. It is part of the political economy of capitalism. It is, you can't, and until you do away with capitalism, you're not going to do away with racism. You can reform it and win victories, but they'll be pushed back. But you got to continue to fight to reform it, you know? And so these statistics that I just read about the bourgeois mass media, they're deeply revealing of a systemic problem that we have to be continually vigilant against and fight to reverse, because without that, we're going nowhere, and you got to do it now. You can't wait until socialism to get there, because you'll never get there. Why? Because the class will be divided, and a divided class, like a divided house. Abraham Lincoln, when he was the senator, a member of the Illinois House, I forget which title he had, made that famous speech. A house cannot, divided against itself cannot stand. Let's move the agenda. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. Hope you'll be celebrating. We want to talk about another part of the overall class struggle of our multiracial, multinational, multi-gendered working class. There's been a lot of strike action taking place over the course of the year. This year, over 154 strikes, same number of last year. Among the strikes were Rutgers, remember that, a month or two ago, Temple, University of Illinois, Chicago, University of Michigan. And then there's the screenwriters, and upcoming Teamsters are negotiating at UPS and the UAW at the Big Three. And there have been some important victories won. Steelworkers in rural Georgia won an important vote. At the Bluebird electrical bus plant. Then in April, Amazon drivers in a small town joined the Teamsters in California, Palmdale, California. And of course, there the organizing, ongoing efforts at Amazon and Starbucks. Some 300 Starbucks stores now have been unionized, and congratulations to all of them. But we have some important big strike actions and other labor activities taking place. First, Anita, you've been looking into what's happening at the the screenwriters. You want to tell us a little bit about it?
Sure. That writer's strike is now entering, I think, its seventh week. It's almost 2 months. They have been really getting a lot of support from other unions. The Screen Actors Guild also has voted to authorize a strike, as I understand it, and the president at a writer's strike picket line, the president of SAG said that it was going to be a hot labor summer this summer, and it really looks like it is. And what's really very inspiring is the number of people from other unions. I've seen Teamsters on TikTok talking about the screenwriters, the Writers Guild of America strike. And there were huge rallies in Los Angeles, I think, a couple of weeks ago, and just last week in New York, under the leadership of Liz Shuler, who is she's been the president of AFL-CIO nationally, I guess, for a couple of years now since Richard Trumka died. And she's just done a phenomenal job, it seems to me, of really rallying the troops. There's 12.5 million AFL-CIO members, and she really has brought them out in force as a show of force in support of the writers. So it's going to be a hot labor summer, as the Screen Actors Guild president said, I'm sure.
It's already hot. And it's getting hot in Erie, Pennsylvania, Scott. What's going on up there with this labor action?
Well, there's a locomotive plant owned by a company called Wabtec, formerly owned by GE. And the workers there are unionized. It's United Electrical Workers Local 506. And they are sort of getting ready to take action for their right to strike. Under their previous contracts with GE, they were allowed to strike over grievances, over unheard, unprocessed, unresolved grievances. And the right to strike actually kept the number of unresolved grievances down. Now, under this new contract with Wabtec, they do not have the right to strike over unresolved grievances, and grievances are up almost tenfold. Unresolved grievances, that is, and the company is sort of taking a strategy of just delaying, not resolving uh, any of these grievances, which is obviously an attack on workers. So what the workers there are saying is that striking is a fundamental right, um, uh, and it's not something that a company can take away from you, and so this kind of shows a couple of truisms or whatever about the class struggle. One is that it is a struggle, right? This locomotive plant is about to get a huge influx in business from the new investments in green infrastructure. Business is about to tick up, but you know, so capitalists will sometimes say, oh, what's good for business is good for workers. That's not the case. What's good for business often results in increased pressure on workers, an increased crackdown on their rights. And so struggle is necessary. And also political struggle is necessary, because the right to take concerted action, to organize, to strike, is protected by the National Labor Relations Act, which was not something that was just given by capital. It was won through struggle back in the 1930s. So this is a situation that People's World will be following. There's an excellent article on it there now. But I wanted to highlight one quote from that article. This is a quote from Sarah Nelson, who's the head of the I've lost it. The Association of Flight Attendants. Excuse me. So she said, collective bargaining and striking is a human right. The idea that you must come to work under terms you did not agree to should have gone out with the passage of the 13th Amendment, which is the amendment that outlawed slavery. So again, that kind of underscores that continuity between the
Okay,
yeah.
good points. Good points. Extra, extra. Read all about it in the People's World. Got a very good article, Rosanna, on that in this week's edition. And Rosanna, most of these strikes are taking place in California. Your state is the state where what is going on in California? The workers are rising up all over the place. They're not taking it lying down. I think you're muted.
Sorry, yes, I've been out at the writer's strike a couple of times, and the strike is still very strong. I also think we need to highlight some of these smaller strikes. For example, there's a Medieval Times, the workers of Medieval Times strike. Medieval Times is kind of like a reenactment entertainment thing, or reenactment of medieval times, and you sit and eat as they're doing this jousting and horse, doing the horseback riding kind of whatever thing they do, entertainment. But they're fed up too. They're out there striking, and these are small companies. There was the baker's strike, pretty much Latino women who held out until it was settled. I think it was over 100 and something days. They held out because they too were fed up. I think what we see is that the workers are now fully understanding the power. More and more workers, I should say, are understanding their power, and the need to unite and strike, the need to unite and and demand their 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 rights to be heard and to be treated with respect and dignity.
Absolutely. And we have to support completely, without reservation, that demand for respect and dignity. I don't care what nobody says, you know, it's constant and it's something that we cannot compromise on. Let's move the discussion this morning. Um, I want the war on women. This is connected, you know, to a whole number of different, so many different sides of it. I want to highlight, at least start with one, Anita.
Hmm.
There's a case in Texas where a drug dealer um, threatened to shoot his partner. This guy took an AR, what's that, 15, and you know has a history of firing it into the homes of people who he had drug disputes with. You know, pulling out pistols several times, firing them in the air. And so the woman uh, took out a restraining order, and the guy got arrested for carrying a weapon. He was, you know, shouldn't, prohibited from doing it. It was appealed. Don't you know that court, the appeals court, overturned the decision to strip him of his arms? You know, this is a guy with a history of domestic abuse. 1,809 women murdered in 2016, and this doesn't include the mass shootings.
Mhm.
I mean, I mean, can you? Not that you can explain it, but can you give us some context, please?
Yeah, I can't explain it. I'm glad you're not asking for an explanation, except yes, I mean capitalism. We're living in a society where it's more important to let some people have the power of having a weapon that is a weapon of, you know, that bullies can use in their own households. And I mean, I think the domestic violence situation has only gotten worse since 2016 too, because during the pandemic, I know domestic violence went up because people were stuck at home, and you know, situations developed. And plus every year there's more and more guns out there on the street, and that makes homicide much more common. So I think there's just I think the laws, the red flag laws that enable somebody like this woman in Texas to take to make sure that that man's guns are stripped away from him. I think they're a help, and I think they've helped a lot in Florida. There actually are some strong red flag laws in Florida right now after the Park Marjorie Taylor Stoneman Douglas High School um, shooting. I know I'm getting her mixed up with Marjorie Taylor Greene. That happens a lot. So yeah, it's really a terrible situation. And I guess what we read recently was the Supreme Court was going to take that on again as and reconsider it, which I guess if the appeals court overturned the original decision, that might be a good thing. But it just seems what like and I want to say one more thing. Gavin Newsom, Rosanna's governor, came out for a 28th Amendment to the Constitution that sets these limits on age limits on guns, no AR-15s, and a number of other things. It's at least he's suggesting it. Whether it, I know the political climate here is nothing that is going to pass that, but it is something. At least he's proposed it and opening up that discussion, which is a great thing.
And then Scott, there's another case. You know, keep on, you right wingers. You keep on with these kinds of gross abuses of basic common sense, to say nothing of democracy. Scott, you got this fake American College of Pediatricians, you know, which is not an official uh, pediatricians association. It split off 20 or 30 years ago from the main group, you know, around an issue related to women's reproductive rights, I think. I may have the issue wrong, but they split off. And over the last 10, 15 years, they have gained undue influence and have passed um, a number of, or helped pass by lobbying and putting a pressure on state legislatures to uh, ban gender affirming care for transgender use, and also on the issue of reproductive rights, you know? And so they're ignoring the scientific medical advice of the majority of doctors. And I mean, you can't explain it perhaps, but can you also provide some context? Can't hear you, Scott. We're having some
First
muting
of all,
problems
so we
this
should say
morning.
first of all that the Republican platform is deeply unpopular. I think even with many Republicans, this extremist attack on women's rights, on gay rights, on the rights of trans people, they're not issues that resonate with um, most people in this country. And so it takes work to turn them into the kind of divisive political issues that that the fascist-oriented forces require. And part of that is this tiny fringe organization, the American College of Pediatricians, which functions basically to take these outlandish, unscientific, undemocratic, inhuman positions and give them a covering of institutional legitimacy. So the American College of Pediatricians supports conversion therapy for gay and lesbian youth. It opposes gender affirming care for trans people. It opposes reproductive freedom. And yet it gets tons of money from billionaires to push this agenda at the state level. So the real, actual, legitimate organization that gives medical advice in the pediatric realm is the American Academy of Pediatrics, which reviews scientific evidence and makes decisions collectively based on peer review and all that. And this is just one aspect of this, of the way that really an unpopular minority agenda is being forced onto or into American politics by corporate money, billionaire money.
Well, as I keep saying, women are not taking it lying down, neither are men. So you all keep on with this foolishness, keep on with these concerted attacks, and sooner than later, there will be, Scott, you like to talk about a strategic defeat of the right. Well, these kinds of activities are laying the a basis for it. The Supreme Court, we want to end on a very important note. The Supreme Court yesterday made Rosanna, very important decision affirming the independence and sovereignty of Native American nations in this country by upholding a law which insists on their right to keep their children and their families and refusing to allow the state to come in and take them out. You know, this arose because of a case in Texas. Big victory. No.
Very, very much so. I think, it's, I was listening or reading about this case, and it was so disgusting to learn of the parents that wanted to adopt this child, and the backdoor conniving and dealings, and even payoffs that they did to to not allow native family to adopt that child, their relative. It's just it's disgusting in many ways, and I think this court ruling is a step towards ending that injustice of taking children away from their families, uh, and putting them in a situation where they lose their culture, they lose their identity, and they grow up trying to figure out who they are. Because if you don't know where you come from, you can't fully understand yourself as an individual, and so you wander, and it just sets you up for a lot of unnecessary challenges in your life. So I'm really happy that this was. I was surprised at the vote. I had been following it, but I was very surprised of a 77-2 vote. That was shocking. So let's hope the other ones the next ones coming up are just as good in favor of working people and people of color.
Yes, affirmative action is coming up. And 70 back in the turn of the century, not this century, but the prior century, the 20th century, something like 70% of indigenous children were taken out of their homes. And now it's 35%, even now, because there are a number of states where these laws do not apply. And one of the things that the ACLU is asking is that, let's write our Congress people and say, we need to pass laws to prevent this kind of thing from happening. Because there's nothing worse than to have a child of your family taken from them, you know, um, taken outside of your community, outside of your culture, into a foreign place. I know that because I've had experience with it personally. Well, our niece was taken from us, just taken from us by the state of Connecticut's Children's Services. Big victory, and something that we need to celebrate. The last story I want to talk about today has to do with golf. Golf, Scott. Anita, you golf?
I went to a driving range once, and I played mini golf off and on. That's about it. But
I mean,
take it away, Joe. I'll let you take this one.
the People's World published a story the other day. To me, it's kind of comical. So the billionaires plan more efficient world rule via a new international golf monopoly. And I'm told that at these big, super rich golf courses that Trump and them have, that's where they do their they make their deals and everything. And so apparently there was a merger, according to the PW, between three rival golf tours: the PGA, Professional Golf Association, Men's Tour, the Salons LIV, and the DP World Golf, which runs European golf. So they announced the merger on June 6th. And so now, Anita, all the billionaires are coming together, and it's, for some, a very frightening thing. So what do you do about that? Do you outlaw golf balls? Do you no more putting? How do you how do you how do you handle it?
Well, it's funny. I think on the East Coast, golf is seen as a very upper class endeavor, or ruling class, even with these country clubs. In Ohio, I was surprised that it's more of a working class sport in Ohio. There are plenty of cheap, public golf courses here, but. Uh, I think this is a deal. I'm not sure it's finalized yet. Maybe I'm wrong about that. I haven't read up much about it, but I thought the coolest thing was LIV stands for 54, because instead of 72 holes of golf, a tournament will be just 54 holes of golf. So I thought that was interesting use of Roman numerals. But it looks like this deal, if it does come to fruition, will benefit basically two people, two entities. Saudi Arabia, which is sort of sports washing its reputation, and wants a foothold in the United States in the world of golf. And secondly, Donald Trump, who owns a lot of golf courses, and this is going to benefit his business. Um, so it's kind of distasteful to me. I don't think anybody. I think these people have way too much money. And they need to be liberated from that money, and that money needs to be diverted to people's needs and off the golf courses, which are also, golf courses are a horrible waste of resources. They're huge waste of water, and I think we're not going to stop them from doing their dirty deals. They'll find smoke-filled rooms or something if they can't do it on the golf course. But I think we have to keep an eye on this and maybe make them pay their fair share and when it comes to the taxes.
Certain sports were once considered provinces of the wealthy. Tennis was like that, and
Polo.
polo, polo, I guess. Golf. My uncle used to work at a golf course back in Youngstown, and it certainly had that aura about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what you do. Rosanna, ban the golf balls.
Just
Caddies. No more
nationalize
golf carts.
everything. Nationalize
Realize
everything.
it. That's the solution. Take
Make it
care,
free for all
everybody.
working people.
Have a great week. We will be back next week with another edition of Good Morning Revolution. Until then, stay strong, stay safe, and stay in the fight. Call your congressman, ask them to pass a law supporting indigenous sovereignty. Am I saying that word right? Sovereignty. And let's pay attention to what the Supreme Court is doing, because there have been some good rulings and some bad ones. Affirmative action is coming up, and that could really change the face of public education and private education in this country. Literally, the complexion of the face. So if they come down with a bad ruling, we got to protest. Happy Juneteenth. Happy Pride. Take care. Bye.
Happy Juneteenth.